I'd like to welcome everybody to a special edition of Celebrate Recovery at Lighthouse Church. If you haven't already heard, we will not be having dinner, large group time, dessert time, or any fellowship time at Celebrate Recovery today. But we will be having small groups. Small groups will be held from 7 to 8 p.m. tonight. Women report straight to the church, and as you come into church, utilize the hand sanitizer at the door. We ask that you please go straight to your groups and maintain distance in between each other as you come in. And once you're in your groups, please stay in your groups for the duration of the group. Men, head down to the House of Hope. There's no need to come to the church. Just head straight down to the House of Hope. And there's once again hand sanitizers as you come in the door. Utilize those and go straight to groups. Also try to maintain your social distance of 6 feet between each other. No group will be greater than 10 people. If you go to a group and notice that it is more than 10 people in there, we're going to ask that you go ahead and break off and start a new group in another room where some distance can be maintained between individuals. Also, this will kind of be what we do for now until things change and we can maybe return back to group Celebrate Recovery as normal. So I'm going to actually ask that whatever group you find yourself at this week in attending, whatever room you're in, that you return to that same room next week. That way we kind of limit our exposure to different people, and we keep within the same circles of contact. That might help with some of the spread of the virus that many of you have heard about, and as we're being asked to limit our contact, maintain 6 feet between individuals and keep group meetings below 10. We're doing everything we can to still have an opportunity for us to come together in recovery, but also to help maintain those guidelines, to do our part to serve and help in the stop of the spread of the virus. So many weeks ago, I actually talked about how somehow I had slipped through the cracks and never actually done a testimony in Celebrate Recovery. And though this is usually a many weeks process, this was going to be a testimony night. We were going to show a taped testimony, but with things changing that we can't have large group time because of the current things going on in our world, my testimony got sped up, and I spent most of the night up finishing and polishing my testimony. A process which usually takes several weeks was done in a matter of probably about an 18-hour time. And so here we go. It's my hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to view this video prior to coming to small group. Small group topic discussion will be the testimony and or whatever you have going on in your life at this time. Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. In my life, being a believer in Jesus Christ is an action statement. It means I practice the ways and teachings of Jesus. I accept Him as my Lord and Savior and engage in an active relationship with God. I am an alcoholic who also has codependent tendencies, along with other life issues. God has given me victory over many issues in life, and others He's still working on in me. I find my identity in that I am a child of God. My identity is not the struggles I have had in life. An understanding of my struggles and the labeling of them has made victory possible, as I was able to identify a program of action called recovery, through which I am able to get myself out of the way so that God may work in my life. It was actually a relief to me when I finally knew what was wrong with me. The solution to all my problems has been found in God and my relationship with Him. God truly has done miraculous things in my life, things which I did not think were possible. He has brought blessings into my life that I could not have dreamed of, things that I didn't even know I wanted. I have learned that He knows what is best for me and that I can trust Him. I grew up in Las Vegas. When people hear this, for some reason, they think it must have been a nonstop party. The truth is, living in Las Vegas is about like living in any other city in America. In my own experience, Las Vegas is quite conservative. The Las Vegas Strip and the tourist areas of town are the exception. People who come to Vegas from the rest of the world are the wild and crazy people, not those of us who live there. I was raised in the church and was confirmed when I was in 6th grade. My dad was a union pipe fitter, and my mother worked in the home, taking care of myself and my 2 siblings. Sometimes my mother would work other jobs as long as they did not interfere with her being able to take care of us, like cleaning the church and selling Fowler brush. Looking back, I sometimes think we were the last 1950s family left in the 90s. We definitely were not rich. We probably were more so on the poor side. But we always had enough. I watched my parents work extremely hard and sacrifice a lot to provide for us kids. I had a good childhood. I have many fond memories. We did everything together as a family. Church on Sunday, camping, fishing, vacations. Our family unit was extremely strong. Externally, my life looked great, but something changed around 7th grade. I started to feel I didn't fit in. I found myself isolating from my peers. I don't remember having any close friends after 7th grade. I couldn't wait to get out of school. I graduated high school a year early during the summer of my junior year with a high grade point average. I was eager to join the full-time workforce. I got a job at age 16 at a grocery store bagging groceries. While bagging groceries one day, a girl came through the checkout line who gave me her phone number as I bagged her groceries. I gave her a call later and we started dating. Little did I know that this relationship would completely alter the course of my life. Not that I was an unwilling participant. I think there was part of me that was looking for a place to belong and was almost hoping for an introduction to the world of drugs and drinking, which I knew nothing of. One day, my girlfriend ran away from home. Her sister and I went out looking for her. While we were driving around, checking places we thought she might be, her sister offered me a line of cocaine. It seems there was no conscious thought of the implications of accepting it, nor did my Christian upbringing come to mind. I quite readily accepted. I actually don't remember feeling amazing from that line. I don't remember much of it. My girlfriend eventually returned, and one day I picked her up, and she mentioned she had a great idea. That we should steal liquor from stores and go to a kickback that night. I really didn't know how to do that, nor did I have any clue what a kickback was, but I knew that I wanted to go. We spent the day stealing liquor. She turned out to be a good teacher on how to do this, and I learned quickly. Never did it jump into my mind that this was odd that this girl who I thought was so innocent knew so much about this world that I knew nothing of. Later in the afternoon, we went to the apartment of a man who was in a wheelchair. He had no legs. I later found out that he had lost them in an accident. He actually, months later after I had met him, would die of an overdose. That was my first time drinking, and I got completely drunk. I don't remember much conscious thought about it, but it must have been so great that I did it the next night. It soon became a way of life. I started having difficulty getting to my job. By this time, I was finished with high school and working full-time stocking the shelves of the store at which I used to be a bagger. One night, I was so drunk I couldn't get to work. My girlfriend, who was no longer my girlfriend as I had found out that she had slept with 2 guys in the bathroom at a gas station, offered me a line of meth. That situation completely devastated me. But still did I not realize that she was not a trustworthy person in my life. She said it would help me get to work. So I did it. Once I took it, it was off to the races from then. Meth became my new obsession. That soon landed me in trouble with the law. The apartment I lived in was raided, and I was taken to jail. I got out of jail and was able to plead my case down. After a while, I met a girl who didn't like that I used drugs. I liked the relationship, so I quit using and quit drinking for a time. This new relationship, I thought was going to be the solution of my life for a while. When I was getting close to the age of 21, her parents would allow me to have a drink at their home sometimes. When I turned 21, I could buy alcohol for myself, which I started doing regularly. After having a surgery on my wrist and having my wisdom teeth pulled, in a relatively short period of time, I was introduced to hydrocodone. I found I really liked how hydrocodone made me feel. After both procedures, I got the doctor to prescribe them to me for as long as they would, but they soon ran out. I was introduced to a doctor who would readily prescribe hydrocodone to me. I said my neck was often stiff and in pain. All I had to say is that my neck hurt, and he would prescribe more and more pills. Soon I started complaining of other symptoms that I knew would get me pills that I thought I would like, and he would prescribe them to me. Everything from pills for narcolepsy to depression to anxiety to high-power sedatives. Soon my body was becoming like a chemistry set. My girlfriend was also prescribed hydrocodone by that same doctor. She had been injured on the job and suffered from lower back pain. She never seemed to take them excessively. She always had pills left over, which was great for me because it meant I could take hers too. I soon found myself drinking every night and popping pills every morning to go to work. That relationship started to fall apart. I was devastated when she left me for one of her male friends. He actually called me to tell me that he had no interest in her whatsoever and had no idea why she had left me for him. I started to seek street drugs, most likely in an effort to cope with the situations of my life, and that my problems were starting to pile up on me. First, I found coke, but that really never did it for me. As I had learned in my first experience with drug being with coke, I was looking for meth. I knew that would work. I used coke for a short time while I sought meth. It didn't take long to find a supplier. I started using meth regularly and was introduced to intravenous use. From there, it was off to the races once again. My life quickly spiraled out of control. For about a year of my life, I don't know that I ever slept. I don't know that I ever came down, and I didn't do a single thing productive whatsoever. I was once again found myself in trouble with the law, this time with quite significant charges. I got an attorney who was probably the only smart thing I did in my life during this period, who was able to get me a pretty good plea bargain. I was placed on probation. The problem was I failed every UA I ever took at the probation officer. I would say it was because I couldn't get clean, but that's not true. I wasn't trying. I was actually trying to get by the system and continue doing what I was doing. I learned that no matter how much detox stuff you take, it does not work if you are still using. You have to stop using long enough for it to go through your system for it to work. I just could not do that. I couldn't figure out a way to stop for any length of time, not even a day. After 6 failed UAs, my probation officer locked me up. I can remember sitting in handcuffs in the probation office. There was almost a sense of calm which came over me. I know now it was my subconscious feeling relief. It was finally going to be over. My conscious self was not quite as bright. I figured I could go serve my time and get out and go back to what I was doing and not be hampered by probation anymore. You see, my only problem in life was that people didn't want to let me do whatever I wanted to do. You all had the problem, not me. I actually convinced myself that all people must use meth. I couldn't imagine that people just got up every day, went to work, and went about their lives without something. I know I couldn't do it. I had to have something to numb the pain inside of me, to fill that hole. I figured I just needed to learn how to manage better and not get in trouble. In jail, this time there was no way I was getting out for at least 45 days. In 2008, it was the minimum time one had to serve on revocation in Clark County, Nevada. This was the first time I had gone more than 3 days without drinking or drugging in years. The only reason I went 3 days is because I had a 3-day, 72-hour hold in the mental health psych ward of Las Vegas at one point. After those 3 days, they recommended that I go to treatment and that I get involved with recovery. I looked at my release paperwork. I called them on the phone and asked them if it was mandatory, and when they told me no, I went right back to using. I actually found a bit of drugs in my backpack, which the police had missed when they searched it. I felt like that was almost like a sign from God, that He just wanted me to go back to doing life as I had done. Remember, I had convinced myself that everybody used. But about a week into this time of incarceration, after 5 to 7 days, a fog started to lift from my mind, and I started to see clearly what my life had become. I did not know how my life had gotten so messed up. I had no clue what to do. I knew I needed help, and I didn't know where else to turn. I hit my knees in that jail and asked God for help. Not help out of jail. I just needed help. I was a mess and didn't know what to do. God started my recovery process then, from that plea for help and a surrender to what He would do in my life. I quickly learned I could send up a kite, which is basically a written request to the jail chaplain's ministry to request a Bible. I did so. This is the Bible I received in that jail in 2008. It has been with me. I've carried this with me all over this country. It has meant so much to me. Though I had read many verses in the Bible throughout my life, after all, I had been confirmed, I had never actually sat down and read the Bible. I started reading the book of Hebrews. I don't know why. I felt drawn to do so. I couldn't read much at a time. I couldn't focus or concentrate for very long. I would read a few verses or maybe a chapter and then set the Bible aside for a bit. I was able to get short colored pencils from commissary. They were expensive, but they were worth it because I was able to use them as highlighters in my Bible as I studied. In Hebrews 4:12 through 13, I learned that God's word is living and active. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of our hearts. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before Him, to whom we must give account. I was comforted to know God's word was alive and active. I had started to feel Him working within me. I knew my thoughts and attitudes were in disarray. It was time to quit running and lay my life open to God. Not that it was ever hidden, but it was time for me to acknowledge God's presence in it. I later came to realize just how much God had always been working in my life. He had been alongside me through all of it. I next started reading the book of James, which is now one of my favorite books in the Bible. As I went through the New Testament, I started reading the Old Testament as well, starting in the book of Genesis. Each day I would take a New Testament time and an Old Testament time, reading through what I could, even though at times it wasn't very much. My mind was still very scrambled. The Bible came alive, though, with new meaning and depth. It was no longer a book, but an instruction manual for life. At this time, I was in dorm housing in the South Tower of Clark County Detention Center. On a small information board in the back of the dorm, I found a sheet of paper that said I could send up a kite to request permission to go to recovery meetings. I started attending every recovery meeting I could, along with a weekly jail chaplain's ministry service. The jail soon became like a rehab center. God started the process of renewing my mind. Romans 12:2, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Leaving out this verse now became a goal for my life, but it truly was a process. The idea that I would just serve my time and then get out and do as I please still lingered. I appeared in front of the judge thinking he would send me to prison, but he sent me to rehab instead. I didn't actually want to go to rehab. I wanted to just serve my time and be free, but God had a different plan, a better plan for me. The rehabs in town were full, and the waiting lists were many months long. My mother, who had always been there for me, lined up a rehab for me to go to. My parents never gave up on me. I've learned a lot from them. One of those things being what it means to truly love. I honestly believe that my recovery is proof that prayer works. I may not be here today if it were not for the answered prayer of my parents. After 76 days in jail, I went to rehab. In rehab, I learned about the disease of alcoholism. I knew nothing about recovery prior to this. In a conversation with one of my counselors, who happened to be sober himself, I learned that I had become what I did not want to be, an alcoholic. I had made jokes about being an alcoholic, but knew I didn't want to become one because I had heard growing up that it was bad. That was part of the reason I felt it was okay to pop pills and do drugs in the morning, because if you didn't drink in the morning, it meant you weren't an alcoholic. I had made this line in my life. It seemed to make sense to me at the time. As long as I didn't drink in the morning and did drugs, there was no way I could be an alcoholic. I can only remember drinking once in the morning. And upon doing so, I realized I cannot do this. I cannot become an alcoholic. And so I stuck to only doing pills or drugs. At that moment, sitting there with that counselor, I conceded to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. Once again, I felt a sigh of relief as I finally now knew what was wrong with me. That simple admission, because of that simple admission, the process of recovery from drugs and alcohol began. I was arrested for revocating my probation on May 7th of 2008 and have been sober ever since that day. My time in jail, my probation, and even my extremely strict probation officer who showed up everywhere all the time. Didn't matter if I was in work, outpatient treatment, at home. He had the way of just appearing everywhere in my life. I have come to learn they were truly all blessings. They were vital to my recovery and helping me to have the life that I have today possible. In my recovery program, I have not done everything perfect, not by a long shot, but I have consistently, to the best of my ability, which my abilities have not always been so great, surrendered my life to God. In rehab, I met a girl who I thought was perfect for me. I later learned why they so strongly advised against rehab romances. I tried to make the relationship work. I say I tried, as I stayed sober and she did not. I learned firsthand what it is like to live a life affected by another person's drinking. If the truth be told, what actually transpired is right out of rehab, a dual hostage situation had occurred, where we took each other hostage and created havoc in one another's life. I got involved in a relationship so early in my recovery, I actually just traded my own chaos for her chaos in life. After a few years, that relationship led me to a point of brokenness that resembled the brokenness I had experienced from my own drinking. I started working on a program of recovery for those who are affected by other people's drinking. In that journey, I worked the steps once again from a new position. When I worked step 3, I once again surrendered my life to the care of God, but I also surrendered the care of her life to God. I felt it was more difficult to surrender somebody else's life to God's care than it was to surrender my own. I learned that as I am a child of God, who God loves and cares for, so are other people. I was trying to play God in her life by trying to arrange her sobriety. That was not my job. That was between her and God. I feared she would die if I left. I knew the relationship was unhealthy, but I could not get out of it. I needed God's help, which he gave me when I earnestly asked. I could no longer live in the what could be, what might have been, or what may be one day. I had to accept reality of what the relationship actually was. When I evaluated the relationship for what it really was, it became plain that I could no longer stay in it. The relationship was not built on the foundation of God. It was built on the foundation of self-will and desire. Shortly after getting out of the relationship, work slowed down in Las Vegas. I knew many guys that were going on the road to work in other towns. It sounded exciting. I prayed about it. I felt God was saying go, but I didn't know where. I was told about a job in North Dakota, and I said I would go. The job was in a town called Fargo, which I had never heard of before. I believe this was on a Wednesday, and I was to start work on a Monday. I pulled out a map, found out where Fargo was, booked a hotel, packed my truck, and left town. I got to Fargo on a Saturday night. I found myself in a meeting of recovery that night. At the recovery meeting, someone told me about a church to go to on Sunday. Here I was in a new town, starting a new job, and the first thing I did was find recovery meetings and a church to attend. This was about 6 years into my recovery. God had equipped me with tools and a willingness to get out of my comfort zone and engage in life. This was God working in my life. This was not me. I came to town to work temporarily and planned to head back to Vegas once the job was done, or somewhere else. God had a different plan. After the job finished up, instead of returning to Vegas, I went on vacation. An amazing vacation, one of those blessings that God made possible in my life. I returned to Fargo after vacation. I had signed up for the North Dakota Master Plumbing Test in Bismarck. So I figured I'd follow through with taking it and then figure out what to do next. While there, I learned they were looking for people to do medical gas piping on the job I had just finished up on, but in a different area of the project. So I went back to work in Fargo. I figured I'd finish the next project and move on, but I felt God nudging me to settle for a while in the area. God brought things together in my life that made it possible for me to consider home ownership. This is something I never dreamed would have been possible. Something I'd always thought about, but I didn't know it would ever become a reality. After much prayer and deciding that there was still more fishing left to do in the area, I listened to God and started looking for a home. Still not feeling that it meant I would stay in the Fargo area more than a few years. But 2 years prior, I had started attending Lighthouse Church, which had a Celebrate Recovery program. I had been to Celebrate Recovery a few times in Las Vegas, but never really felt the program was for me. Lighthouse Church had a Celebrate Recovery program, and Pastor Dale had asked me several times to attend. After being invited many times, all of a sudden I felt God was telling me to make a commitment to start attending Celebrate Recovery on a regular basis, along with my other recovery meetings. So I did so. I would never have dreamed what God had in store for me. About 6 months after purchasing a home, I ended up changing careers, going full-time into ministry. Along with other ministry duties at Lighthouse Church, I became the Celebrate Recovery pastor. I tell people all the time that recovery is a journey. You never know what God has in store for you. I could never imagine that when I hit my knees in that jail cell, the amazing adventure He had in store for me. I can promise you I never envisioned being a pastor in Fargo, North Dakota, especially since I had no idea where Fargo was. God truly has blessed my life in amazing ways. Shortly after coming on staff at Lighthouse, I attended a training in Bismarck. At the training, I happened to sit down to a woman who is now my fiancée. At the time, I wasn't even looking for a relationship. I was just going about life trying to serve God. We got to know each other a little bit at the training and became friends. Soon we began dating. We have been dating for over 2 years now. We got engaged in February of this year. She truly is an amazing woman. Our relationship is unlike anything I've ever known before. It is built on a foundation of God. We use God's design for dating and have been truly rewarded with a relationship of mutual respect, trust, and love. While I don't know what else God has in store for me, I know I can trust him. I encourage everyone to embark upon a journey of recovery. Yours will be unique to you, but I know you will find a life you could not have imagined, and that God has a plan for you, just as he had a plan for me. Thank you for letting me share my story.